All right, welcome back to the Press Box Podcast. Today, episode number 85, we have a special guest joining us. His name is Barry Murphy. He is a former University of Tennessee collegiate swimmer, 19-time All-American, and former Olympian in the 2012 London Olympics. Ahead of the 2021 Tokyo Olympics, which were postponed from last year, we're going to get his thoughts on not only his career through college and his Olympic career, but as well as just some broader Olympic topics, what the athletes might expect at the village, how it typically plays out in the Olympics, and how it might differ this year with the COVID restrictions going on in Tokyo. So before we get to that, let's talk always as we do about our Twitter account at PressBoxPod. Be sure to give us a follow on there, and also rate and subscribe on iTunes. Search us on iTunes, PressBox Podcast. Leave a review, subscribe to get all the latest episodes, and won't miss a thing. So without further ado, special guest Barry Murphy in this episode of the Pressbox Podcast. Hope you guys enjoy it.
Okay, welcome back to the Press Box Podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Ralph Miranda. I'm joined by my co-host, Joseph Miranda. We have a special guest for you today. The Olympics, 2020 Olympics, which are being competed in 2021 because of the COVID pandemic, are only a few days away in Tokyo. So we thought, what better way to prepare for that than to have on as a guest a former Olympian, and more importantly, for most of our guests in the area, a former volunteer from the University of Tennessee. Our guest today is Barry Murphy. Barry was a participant in the 2012 London Olympics. He competed in the 100-meter breaststroke and the 50-meter freestyle. Barry is a 19-time All-American, and as I said, competed at the University of Tennessee. And we are honored to be joined today by Barry Murphy. Barry, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here, and I'm honored to join. It's great to hear from people from my alma mater and from the Knoxville area, and great to reconnect.
Well, I would imagine you probably have a little bit of a soft spot for the Knoxville area, because I know when you went to Tennessee, you were quite a bit younger, and you had probably never been away from home for that long. And here you go, flying all the way across the ocean to live at a place that you've never been before and be away from your family. And to have gone through that, you probably have a special bond with East Tennessee.
Yeah, I've got such great memories of East Tennessee. I've got such a strong bond with it. I've really enjoyed my time there. I say to my fiance now, I tell her stories about, living in Knoxville, and just the camaraderie I built up with teammates, with the locals. I can't speak highly enough of Knoxville and the people that live there. And as you mentioned, it was a huge challenge as a young man from Dublin, from Ireland, who had never been to the US before, and to kind of pack up and take the risk in moving to Knoxville, Tennessee. To be honest, I hadn't heard much about Knoxville before JT got in touch, or the swim coach got in touch. So, but the people in Knoxville welcomed me with open arms. A great place, and a place that I hold very dear to my heart.
Well, what were some of the other, obviously, I guess you were 18 or 19 when you went to Tennessee?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I finished high school at 18, and then took a year to kind of figure things out.
Okay.
Again, so just very new to the whole NCAA system, and what was required in terms of SATs and all that type of stuff that we don't do in Ireland. So it would have been about 18 and just turned 19 when I got out there.
So what were some of the, I guess, a couple questions. One, what prompted you to come to Tennessee? In other words, I know Tennessee got in touch with you, but why did you think it was important to swim at a college in America? And what were some of the other barriers that you faced? And obviously coming from another country, language wasn't the issue, but I'm sure there were some things that you had to get used to living in East Tennessee.
Yeah. So I suppose the first question why Tennessee? Ireland generally has quite a small swimming community, and I would have, come up through age group swimming and sort of competing at the national level, and really, aspired to be a great swimmer. I remember watching the '96 Olympics, and we had a swimmer there, Michelle Smith, representing Ireland. She won loads of gold medals, and I had just started going to swimming lessons and just started to kind of dip my toe into water, literally, and was really inspired by that. And sort of as I joined the swim club, I developed a real strong social circle within the swim club. A lot of my friends were swimmers, and for me, it was just about going to see my friends every day. Yeah, we'd go to practice. I wouldn't really take practice that seriously. I was just going down there to see my friends and hang out. So it kind of got to about 17, 18 and really wanted to take this seriously. It was, the 2004 Olympics was coming up. I probably thought I was a bit too young there, but looking at all the top Irish swimmers that had come before me, Andrew Bree, another ex-volunteer, was from Ireland. He was the Irish record holder in the same event that I swam, and he had really, really good success with Tennessee and internationally as well. It was actually he came home to Dublin, and Dublin was hosting the European Swimming Championships, which was the first time we'd ever done that. And I was quite young at the time, and Andrew came back, was kitted out in all orange, came with the coach, John Tremblay, and went and swam to a European silver medal. And to do that in front of a home crowd, I was in the crowd cheering him on. And I thought, this was awesome. Like, I want to be that guy who's winning these medals. And so the connection was there. I always looked up to Andrew. And it was actually that connection through Andrew Bree that, JT had got in touch and said, I've seen the results of this Murphy kid. Do you know much about him? What's he like? Would he be interested in coming out and seeing the place? And so I just knew that, the top Irish guys had gone to the US and competed in the NCAA system. It was probably something I had to do at the time. We didn't have really a high performance setup in Ireland. High performance swimming wasn't really a thing. So I just knew best swimmers go there. I want to go there. And so there was a few universities in touch. Kentucky were in touch, LSU, and North Carolina State, and they were all the ones that I was trying to feel out. But I think it was the history of Tennessee. They had Olympic medalists, NCAA champions in the events that I swam. They were a sprint-oriented program, and really JT said to me from day one, like, you're going to come in as a freshman and you're going to be a big player in all our relays. And really, I want you to be sort of the backbone of all the sprint relays and the sprint events. And, he just kind of put that trust in me early, and I just connected with it. So when all the cards were laid out on the table, Tennessee was head and above, the rest of the world. Not just with the attitude that they brought to the sport, but the facilities as well, because, in Ireland, this might blow your mind, but we only got our first 50-meter pool in kind of like 2001.
Wow.
And the University of Tennessee now has 3 50-meter pools in the vicinity. So, I remember someone saying to me, like, University of Tennessee probably hosts the Olympics if they wanted.
That's right.
And that's it. We just don't have access to those facilities in Ireland. We didn't have really a sort of a team like camaraderie in the sport of swimming. It's very individual, and it just stood out. And I remember going on my recruitment trip in April. Sun was split in the sky. Went to the orange and white game and thought, I got to come here.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So, that was amazing. It was huge. And then I can't remember the second part of your question.
That's okay. No, it really is irrelevant at this point. Go ahead.
That was good. No, I had a question. You alluded to a little bit there. Some of the events you participated in. You mentioned relays. Heading into Tennessee and really the start of your, really competitive swimming career. Like, what were your main events? What did you excel at? And then, and also talk about how that fit into some of the relays you did as well.
Yeah. So my main events were the 50 freestyle, the 100 freestyle, and the 50 and the 100 breaststroke. Okay. So that first year in Knoxville was the 2005 2005-2006 season, and we were actually hosting SECs at the pool. So at that event, I would have swam the 200 medley relay, the 400 medley relay, the 200 freestyle relay, the 400 freestyle relay, and then 3 individual events as well. So pretty like full schedule. But it just meant that, every dual meet, every championship meet, all the way from freshman to my last season at NCAA's, I was involved in sort of all those sprint relays. And I always found that although, I would swim quite well individually, because, we were flying the flag for Tennessee, I was in a relay with my teammates, with my brothers that we had trained with for the entire season. I'd always elevate my game for the relay swims. So yeah, I just absolutely loved them. Again, in Ireland, we didn't really do relays. There wasn't really a focus on relays. But just the whole team spirit and team camaraderie of the relays is something I really love about the NCAA programs.
Along with that too, obviously you had a great career at Tennessee. Now, 19-time All-American, fantastic. Now our background a little more like football, baseball, basketball. We're thinking, okay, you play 4 seasons, you can be a 4-time All-American. Talk about how that's a little different in swimming. I think it has to do something with the events, if I'm right. Kind of explain that to our listeners.
Exactly, yeah. So every time you score for the college in an event, you become either an All-American or an honorable mention All-American. So anytime you make top 8 at NCAA's, you'll be an All-American, and then top 9 through 16 would be honorable mention. And we just kind of bucket them all into All-American. So between relays, I don't know what the split is on them, to be honest, because I feel like we were kind of always in sort of top 8 range in the sprint relays. One year we got 3rd, which was great. And then individually, I would have been sort of, top 8, top 16 as well. So yeah, it just meant that each time you score for the university at NCAA's, it's 1 through 16, and then you'll be categorized. You'll basically earn All-American rights on it.
Barry, I want to talk a little bit about, again, for our listeners, I urge you to go to YouTube and search for the documentary with Barry Murphy, pre-London Olympics documentary. It's a fascinating documentary. I mean, if you ever wondered about the world of competitive swimming and what it takes to be a champion, you need to watch that documentary. So Barry, look, in response or because of that, tell me a little bit about what it does take to be a champion. I mean, obviously, it takes tremendous discipline, tremendous sacrifice, but you're in a sport where hundredths of a second can be the difference between a champion and just a runner-up, right? So talk to me a little bit about how you deal with that and how you take yourself to that next level.
Yeah, so I think obviously a lot goes into it. I think on my own particular journey, there was a lot of ups and downs to really understand what it takes to get to that level. That sort of documentary was following me, sort of had already sort of qualified into London, and was following my prep into the London Olympics. But
right.
If they hadn't followed me sort of 4 years prior, dealing with the massive disappointment of not making the Beijing Olympics,
right.
It would have been a completely different story. And it's only when faced with those adversities and those challenges that you really have to take a step back and analyze, what am I doing? What have I done to get to this point? What am I doing that's working well? Which is very important. I think a lot of athletes focus on what am I doing incorrectly or what can I improve on. I remember going to I moved programs when I was in the US. I went to work with a coach up at the University of Michigan called Mike Bottom.
Right.
And I remember the first session we did a lot of video analysis up there. And he said to me, okay, let's have a look and see what you're doing well. And that was like a light bulb moment. I'd never had someone say that to me. It was always, what can we do to fix or improve what you do? But it's very important to focus on what we do well. People are successful and they get to a certain level, but what they're good at, obviously we focus on improving it. But I always think, that's kind of changed my outlook on how to approach it. But yeah, as I said, 2008, it did not go well. I was very disappointed. I was swimming quite well. I was breaking Irish records. Which, when you kind of look at it in black and white terms, it means you're the fastest ever Irish person. So I was swimming fast, but I wasn't selected to go to the Olympic Games. I missed out on the Olympics by probably 0.19 of a second.
Amazing.
So not that much in the grand scheme of things. So it really set me up to understand, again, what was I doing well, but what did I need to do more of? Where did I need to be more accountable? What could I do to improve my attitude, my mental game? And also, was I coasting too much? So that learning curve in the 2008 season was huge for the sort of back half of my career. I made sure that I was way more accountable to myself, to my coaches, to my teammates, and to my family, right? Yeah, I think the family also gets overlooked quite a bit when we're talking about high level sport.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of times my dad was getting up to bring me to practice at like 5 a.m. The amount of financial investment,
Right.
we're a small sort of blue collar family, the financial investment to help, we're on a full ride. So they're obviously helping me be over there.
Right.
So there's still a financial investment there. So I just had to be more accountable. I had to really have to check all the boxes, cross all the T's and dot all the I's, and look at what do I need to do to get to that level. And it really was that 2008 season, the massive disappointment of not making the Beijing Olympics. I felt like I'd let everybody down. I kind of felt like I was already on the team, they were already, it just felt like they were sending me to get like fitted for the opening ceremony gear. It was weird. And I just felt like I had a right to be on that team. But you don't.
Right.
You have to be accountable to everything that you do. You have to earn your spot on that team, and you have to leave no stone unturned to get to that level. So it just meant going into that 2009 season was my last season with the university. I was co-captain of the swim team, and I had it was the best training season I've ever had. There was a new hunger, desire, determination in the gym, with my nutrition, extra dry land, competition, just everything was just like dialed up to 11. And really it was understanding what I was doing before. So there was a barometer. I was like, yeah, I was training hard, but was I really? And then what I was doing then, and just keep trying to elevate that level to take into everything you do. Really, it's about, it's a bit of a cliche that people say every rep counts, but it really does.
Mm-hmm.
It's a race against the clock. This career is finite in sport, and every day you let slip by is a day you don't get back.
Perfect.
Right. Yeah, and you touched on something there that I was going to bring up. Anyway, myself being from a strength and conditioning background, talk a little bit about what the training you did outside of the pool, whether it be in the gym, maybe yoga, the nutrition aspect, and how maybe that's changed over the course of your career. We probably learned more efficient or better ways to do things as you've gone on. So talk a little bit about that and how that's helped you in the pool.
This was a huge, my time in Tennessee was a huge learning curve in what to do in strength and condition wise. I probably came out to Tennessee at about maybe 155 pounds, and I was probably like 6'2", so no muscle,
Right.
I looked malnourished, to be honest. And I remember the assistant coach asked me to step on the scales, and he was like, whoa, okay, I'm gonna put some muscle on you. So the first, I remember, this is going to sound really sad, but the first couple of months when we were living in Gibbs Hall, it was real, again, all really new experiences, but we used to work with a strength and conditioning coach called Rod. I actually can't remember his second name now. It leaves me, but yeah, the first few months he would just be like, grab a jump rope and a 45, and grab a 45-pound plate, and we'd be doing overhead lunges with 45. Now, for me, as a 155-pound skinny kid, this was torture. I used to go to bed every night before every night, and I'd be dreading waking up the next morning, knowing that I had to do that overhead lunge up and down the indoor football field, and like honestly, like just terrified of doing it. But we did that for about 2 or 3 months. Like it was just pure conditioning. I remember I used to see other freshmen on the team walking around like campus, and everyone would be hobbling. Like the DOMs would be next level. But I've never, those like couple of months were probably the hardest I've ever, like the most difficult, it's not the hardest I've ever trained, but the most difficult time in my life, because it just was relentless and consistent. But it just meant that there was never fear of any more like hard work. It was already as bad as it could get, really. And any time, any pre-season conditioning or anything like that, where running stadiums or just whatever, it just wasn't as hard as those first few months, because I was just so green and raw and didn't have any conditioning or any fitness in my legs. So that was a wake-up call. Sort of sophomore year, it was just generally like trying to get stronger and bigger and trying to fill out and get more powerful. But kind of what I found was that I was lifting so heavy and I was just kind of dead. Like there was no spark to my swim. I was feeling slow and sluggish. And it was really my junior year where we started kind of exploring other forms of strength and conditioning. And we really got into like Russian kettlebell lifting. So we were finding that the connection between it was so like, it's such a dynamic movement, things like kettlebell swings, kettlebell cleans, kettlebell snatches, double kettlebell snatches, everything from, because I've been in Europe, I'm talking kilos now, but we'd be kind of snatching sort of like 32 kilo kettlebells, and we just, honestly, and the translation of those movements into the water really were next level. Like we were feeling so strong and so fast. And again, carried that into sort of our senior year where I probably didn't, like I was probably up to about 185 pounds, but super dynamic, super strong. Did a lot of work on my vertical jump, a lot of jump and drills, a lot of plyo drills. And that really translated well into the short course yards pool. And again, it's, kettlebells is something I still do to this day. I just feel like you can do sort of big, heavy Olympic lifts and things like that. But the dynamic movement is super translatable into swimming. Kind of like no other really like strength tool or strength equipment is. And I just felt so strong and so mobile and agile from doing it. It was really something that it was a light bulb. And any kind of young swimmers that are asking, I always talk like, how comfortable you are with the kettlebell. Is this something that you can incorporate? And you kind of see people like when they first start out, they can't really swing it. They don't really understand the movement. It's very, big kind of compound lifts that is what they know. And so things that are kind of dynamic and flowy like kettlebell, it's a bit foreign to them. But once they kind of get into it, they kind of see, swimming it's a fluid motion. It's a fluid pattern. You don't get in and fight the water. You have to work with it. So the kettlebell really does translate well into that.
Let's talk a little bit now.
That's a great point there. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's right. That was a great point. I think Joseph, you understand it better than I do. But
right,
the lifting, it's not an impact or powerful sport. It's more of a fluid sport as opposed to football, say, where you need those power lifts to be able to exert, a lot of effort. Right? Is that right, Joseph?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, depending on what event you're doing, obviously, there's sprints and of course distance swimming, but it was very well said.
Let's get a little bit lighter here. Not that we weren't light before, but we're just a few days away from the Olympics, right? I mean, here we are. Finally, we have an Olympics that many people thought may never happen because of the pandemic last year. So I want you to talk about, many of us don't. All we get to see of the Olympics is what we see on TV. So I want you to paint a picture for us of what it was like walking out of the opening ceremonies, what it was like to finally realize that you had reached a dream, and just a little bit about the atmosphere, the Olympic Village, just a little bit about your experience and what it's like.
Yeah, so it's awesome. I'm a huge sports fan. So a huge sports fan. So for me, going to the Olympics was obviously a dream come true. Um, it'd be something that I pursued for my career my entire life. When you first kind of jump into pool, or you go to your first meet, or you see it on TV, you're thinking that'd be awesome to go to. But probably as a sports fan first, to see other athletes that you recognize, Nadal, like Rafa Nadal,
Right.
the U.S. men's basketball team were there. Kobe was there. It was amazing to just be a part of that atmosphere. It was a celebration of sport, is what it is.
Right.
And the best part about the London Games was the entire UK and London, like the entire place was behind these games. There was just a real celebratory atmosphere amongst the whole city. And then in the games itself, it was electric. To see other athletes and kind of, see the village and really just be a part of this celebration was amazing. Kind of when you get into the village, you obviously get set up in your base camp. So as Team Ireland, you get to know like other like Irish sports stars that you've kind of seen from afar. Get to like room with athletes that you've never been. So for me, I was rooming with a badminton player that I actually knew previously. But then two Irish cyclists had just come from the Tour de France and were joining and sharing the apartment with. So just chatting to those guys about their training, their nutrition, their thoughts on competition. It was really kind of, as a student of sport, it was really fascinating to just hear other people's perceptions and take on things, and understanding why they did the way they did. And, Ireland's quite strong in boxing as well. So at those Olympics, I think we won one gold and maybe 2 or 3 bronze in the boxing. But then going down to the team room for Team Ireland, and then seeing the boxers warm up on the pads. Honestly, these guys are probably like 105 pounds, but lighting the pads up, absolutely tearing the pads apart. It was amazing to be a part of. For this games, from what I'm seeing on Instagram and things like that, it looks very different. It still seems like a celebration, but obviously with the new restrictions in place,
right,
that kind of mingling and social aspect, I think it's going to be a bit different, right? So I was kind of seeing like in the food hall, they're sitting opposite each other with perspex up, and you're still connecting, but they're just that little bit more cautious. From a competition perspective, or from an athlete, it's a whole new kind of stress on your body, taking these PCR tests, waiting for results. It's a new thing that these athletes wouldn't have dealt with before. So it's going to be the people who really are able to stay level-headed, who let these sort of things just water off ducks back type of thing, that are going to excel at these games. And it's going to be really interesting to see. I'm so fascinated. For me, when London, I think the capacity was about 20,000 people. I've never seen 20,000 people in the swimming pool. So to go out that first day, and sorry, just to backtrack there, I didn't go to the open ceremony because my 100 breaststroke was on the very next morning. So like 9 a.m. the next morning was my first event. So watched the opening ceremony like in my room, but could see it like out the window, like the fireworks and lights and all. So kind of going out to that first morning, my dad was in the crowd. My parents were at the Olympic House somewhere in London. Oh, sorry, my mom was at the Olympic House somewhere in London with my brothers. And yeah, just being able to swim in front of that crowd was amazing. I had some friends come over from Dublin who flew over to London to watch as well. So just, again, people who followed my career my whole life. My age group swim coach, who I was with since I was 11 years old, she came over and was, so grateful to be able to kind of put together, a life's work and perform at that level, and just have the people that have really backed me the whole way to be able to put that together for them. Yeah, it was amazing. And yeah, just the whole atmosphere was next level. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing this. There's going to be no one in the stands this time around.
Right.
which again is going to be weird. Talking about pumping in crowd noise. So again, it's just a lot of new variables that there isn't too much experience with for these athletes. So it's really going to be interesting. I'm so fascinated to see how it all plays out. And just even understand, like, there's been a couple of cases in the village already.
Right.
So are people going to be on edge about that?
Right.
It's such a weird game.
Let me ask
to see.
Let me ask you this. So you mentioned the fact that there probably won't be any fans there. How important are fans in an Olympic pool area to the swimmers? I mean, do you kind of thrive off of that, or is it something that you don't even know is happening when you're swimming?
I think at the Olympics, it's very like, so to backtrack, fans are amazing to have on deck. No, when when I was at the University of Tennessee and we had a home dual meet, or SECs when all the parents be in the stands, waving the orange and white, and you got your cheers going, or the TENNE chant, and that meant so much, and it really does have a huge impact. Even in the race, for me as a breaststroker, that up and down motion, it's a hey,
right,
and you can hear that, and coming down that last length, you can hear, you understand the decibels are elevating in the race, so it's amazing. At the Olympics, 20,000 people, so your little cheering section might get a little bit drowned out, but you just have to channel the people cheering and think they're cheering for you, and carry that with you as well. So yeah, they mean so much. There's no amount of noise being pumped in is going to make up for people power.
Right.
And I think it's going to be so interesting to see. I'm so fascinated by how people respond to it, and how this whole new variable and this new world is going to affect people's performances.
The thing that most of these another thing that these athletes won't get to do, I'm sure, is be able to get out and explore Tokyo a little bit. Talk about your Olympic experience. Were your swimming events towards the start of the Olympics or the end, and was it kind of more of a business trip in and out after your events, or did you get a chance to go out and explore London a little bit?
Yeah, so swimming for every Olympics, swimming's on the first week.
Right.
So it just meant that you could get your events, compete in your events, do what you need to do, and then the second week was kind of like a vacation in London. So for us, it was amazing. It was amazing to have that second week, so we got to go to other events. Went to finals of track and field one day, and Bolt was doing the 200 final, and then is it David Rudisha won the 800 final as well, and were a record. And the track and field was electric that second week because Team GB were doing quite well with Mo Farah and athletes like that, and amazing to be a part of. Again, the sports fan in me, that little kid who loved sports was on cloud nine. So really it was just taking in other events that next day, going out into the city of London. People would stop you if you had your accreditation or your team kit on and take photos. It really was like a huge just celebration of sport, and the whole city was absolutely buzzing. It was amazing, and I tried to soak it in as much as possible. So the closing ceremony, the brilliant, like loads of really great pop acts, like Queen minus Freddie.
Right. Minus Freddie, right.
Spice Girls. So take that, like loads. So just enjoying it, just appreciating that, this is what you saw on TV as a kid growing up. You're now part of it. Enjoying the atmosphere, meeting other people, again, kind of enjoying the sport. So really just trying to soak it in and appreciate it, and know that these type of events and your participation in them don't happen every day. So when you can be there to really appreciate what's gone into to getting there, and just enjoying sort of the the moment really.
What let me ask you a quick question, a little bit off the not off the topic, but just comparing, say, the Olympics, which I guess would be kind of like a world championship, as opposed to, say, the European Championship. I mentioned off air before we got on that my family's from Italy, so I spoke to my uncle last Monday in Italy about the Italians winning the European Soccer Championship, and he was all excited about that. Okay, because they were the champions of Europe, but obviously to win the World Cup is a step above. But I guess the question is there any different atmosphere, or is it all the same? In other words, to be the champion of Europe or the champion of your country, as opposed to being able to be a world champion, that just the environment or the just the atmosphere.
Yeah, so the Olympics is like no other like event in the world because it is all the sports coming together. And when we would go to the World Championships or when we go to European Championships, it's just the swimming World Championships or the European World Championships.
Right.
Well, it's the aquatics, okay? So it's like in Europe, it's swimming, diving, water polo, and synchronized swimming. So it's, they consider it aquatic championships, and it's kind of 2-week thing, but we wouldn't sort of intermingle with the other sports, or we wouldn't like go and watch the other sports. It's really just you're there for your swimming championships, and then you kind of get out. So it doesn't feel like a celebration like the Olympics feels. So the European Championships, swimming as well has quite a reserved kind of atmosphere to it. The governing bodies of swimming, both in Europe and at the world swimming level, it's very sort of formalized. It's very, a lot of kind of it's like people in suits, and it doesn't have that sort of party feel that the Olympics has. So it's real unique. In the Olympics, it's just nothing on earth, like nothing on earth. It's the only time, it's the only place in the world where all different athletes from all over the world come together to compete in their sport. And when you even sort of kind of rank it against the World Cup as well, like the World Cup is just that one sport, so it's
true.
Totally unique.
That's a good point.
Just feels like it's it's all the athletes from all over the world who have worked for the last 4 years to come together, and it does feel like a celebration and a party. And people are still very serious and focus on what they have to do, but there's just that sort of buzz in the air that is, I've never experienced at any other competition.
Interesting. Barry, I just want you to you said something early on here in our session that I thought was really fascinating, and I'm sure you work with a lot of younger swimmers, somebody that comes to you and trying to help them pursue their dream, which I think is great. But you talked about how the failure to make the 2008 team didn't destroy you. It for a while you felt that way, but it catapulted you to, what do I need to do to get over that hump? And I think that's so important to any athlete out there, any young athlete in any sport that they're competing in, because you're going to fail and from time to time, and it's how you deal with that makes you better. So recap that for me one more time, and just kind of give us an insight for all of our younger listeners to that mindset of what it takes.
Yeah, so that's it. I suppose when adversity comes your way, or when disappointment, or so to speak, failure comes your way, really there's two roads to go down. You can wallow in it and, woe is me, and let's be honest, you can play the victim.
Right.
And look, there might be things that work against you that were out of your control, or there might be people that crossed you that were out of your control. But the real beauty with swimming is it's pretty black and white. Okay, there's a qualifying time, there's a window to do it in. So if you do the qualifying time, you'll make that team. There's anything else, any other variables, any other people that might be involved in it. If you do that time, you're on that team. And so that was my thought process when I didn't make the Olympic qualifying time in 2008. Things could have fell my way, and I got a bit of luck, and maybe someone had nominated me for X, Y, and Z, but really it was up to me to make that time. And so I had to be accountable for every single thing that I did going forward to make sure that come 2012, that I'd made that time and that my name was the first name on the team sheet. Um, it just meant that everything I did, there was no missed reps, there was no missed training sessions, there was no light reps in the gym. It was, we're going for this, and you know how devastated you were. You remember who you let down, or who you perceive to have let down. They might still be super proud of you, but who you perceive to have let down. You remember how you felt, and you remember talking to your friends who were there in Beijing at the time, and you weren't there. So it's up to you, to be accountable for every single thing that you do, because it's not, other people's fault. It's totally on your shoulders, and that fire and determination and kind of chip on my shoulder, if you were, to use that term, just meant that, yeah, there was a new fire, a new determination, a new desire. It was my senior year with the University of Tennessee. It would be my last year competing for the University of Tennessee. Let's leave no stone unturned. Let's make sure that come NCAAs, you're flying the flag for Tennessee. You're not letting your teammates down. You're not letting your coaches down. You're not letting yourself down. Your family are going to come over to NCAAs. You're not letting them down. They're in the crowd, and you just have to make sure everyone's proud of you, and that, you've done everything you can. If your best on the day isn't good enough, so be it. But once I was always confident my best on the day would be good enough, and if I was able to do that every single day, then I was happy.
Well said. Excellent. Joseph, rapid fire.
We're going to get into some of these rapid fire questions to wrap it up here. Don't go too in depth on the answers. Just a few fun questions here to kind of let our listeners get to know you and have a little fun.
Sure. Do it.
Let's do it. All right. So to start off with, you prefer day meets or night meets?
I don't even know what they are.
Okay, so
in other words,
I misspoke.
Do you prefer performing? I guess you mean prefer performing in the day or at night? Swimming.
Swimming. Competition. Yeah.
Night all the time. Yeah.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah.
Favorite SEC campus? I got you. As alluded to by the early morning workouts, I hear you, absolutely. Favorite SEC campus you visited other than Tennessee, perhaps for a swim meet or a competition?
Oh, good question. I think Gainesville. Really liked Gainesville. Loved they have two pools, and their outdoor pool. I always loved kind of warming up or warming down in the outdoor pool. And the weather was always good in January down there as well.
Yes, it was. Yeah, that's right.
Favorite pre-competition meal, if you had one?
Yeah, so we always had pasta, chicken, and marinara sauce or tomato sauce. So yeah, there was just every deal meat, munching it down.
Favorite athlete you met at the Olympics? You mentioned maybe you saw Nadal or maybe somebody else.
Yeah, saw Nadal and Kobe, and favorite athlete. So I'm a Manchester United fan. So we had a few Manchester United players playing for Team GB, and I was keeping an eye out for Ryan Giggs, but I never got to do it. Never saw him. That was disappointing.
Absolutely. Okay, so that kind of leads to my next favorite sport other than swimming.
Yeah, love soccer. Yeah, a big Manchester United fan. Have been since I was a little kid. My dad's a Manchester United fan. My granddad's a Manchester United fan, and yeah, we're a bit of a rebuild at the moment, so
it's okay.
Fingers crossed. We're going to have a good season this season. Some potentially new signings on the horizon. So fingers crossed.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
That's it. If I were to take a look at your pre-competition or pre-meet swim playlist, what artists would I see most often?
You know what? Every year was kind of different, but a lot of like 80s. Like metal at the moment, Motley Crue, and then a lot of like rap and hip hop as well. So during my time in Tennessee, it was mostly rap and hip hop. But yeah, towards the end of my career, a lot of heavy rock, metal.
Perfect.
Favorite event you were able to see at the Olympics other than swimming?
Definitely that night, track and field, bolts 200 and the world record 800.
And then final question,
If someone were to come to you and say, "Hey, you made the Olympic team. We're having the Olympics in any city in the world that you pick, what city would you pick?"
That's a good question. Probably Sydney,
You can think about
Australia.
it. Okay.
Sydney, Australia.
Yeah, Sydney,
Any particular
Australia.
reason? Any particular reason why Sydney?
Yeah, amazing city. I was actually living in Australia there up until like last year. So I
Oh,
was over there
okay.
for 3 years and living in Melbourne. But anytime I went to Sydney, it was honestly spectacular. If there was ever a culture for swimming ingrained in the nation, it is the Australian nation. And Sydney is just so beautiful on the harbour, the bridge, the Opera House. And there's actually a pool like right under the bridge opposite the Opera House, an outdoor pool. And it's honestly spectacular. So yeah, I think Sydney, I know they did it in 2000, but
Right.
yeah, I'd love to go to a games there.
You're born about 10 years too late, I think.
Yeah, too late there.
Well, Barry, I can't tell you enough how much we've enjoyed having you on to learn a little bit about your history, a little bit about the Olympics and your experiences, obviously here in Knoxville. We wish you the very best in all your future endeavors, and hopefully we can reconnect sometime again in the future.
Thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's a good trip down memory lane. And yeah, I appreciate it. And best of luck with the podcast.
Okay. Thank you, Barry.